Lesson 1-4, solving absolute value equations. Some key terms we need to review are absolute value, which is the distance from zero on a number line. And remember that absolute value is always positive. And here's the symbols for absolute value, these straight up and down bars. In this case, there's an x inside there, so this would mean the absolute value of x. The empty set, when you solve something and you get no solution, another name for that is the empty set. Here's the symbol and the notation for empty set. It is a circle with a line through it, or you can use the set braces with nothing in there. Stating no solution is certainly acceptable. First example we're going to look at is evaluating an expression with absolute value, or that has absolute value if given a value for the variable. In this case, x is equal to 4. So if we look at this, right now we have 2.7. So I have 2.7 plus the absolute value of 6 minus 2 multiplied by x, which we're putting in a 4 for that. Okay, so if I look there now and I do the operations, I have 2.7 plus the absolute value of, let's take a look at what we get inside there. 2 times 4 here is 8. So I'm going to cross this off and put 8. 6 minus 8 is negative 2. The absolute value of negative 2 is 2. So I really have 2.7 plus 2, which is 4.7. When you evaluate an expression, you get a numeric answer. And we get into solving absolute value equations. And this first one here, right here, the absolute value of y plus 3 is equal to 8. First thing you need to know about absolute value equations is you need to isolate the absolute value. So if we go down here, we have a help sheet we've developed for you. And I'll bring that up now and show you how to use it. Notice when I say equations here, the absolute value part must be isolated first. If you have the absolute value, and that just means the absolute value part is the only thing that's on one side. Now, in this sheet here, we're showing an a inside there. That could be any expression. It could be 2x plus 5 or whatever. Okay, b is on the other side. Typically, it will be a number. Sometimes it could be an expression. When you have absolute value, you have to deal with two cases. Because absolute value has both a positive and a negative that have that absolute value. Okay, so if we look at this first one, if we go back to our examples here, notice we have the absolute value part isolated. It's just y plus 3 right there. Okay, so we have to do two cases. So I want to do, I'll do this over here. Case 1, or case 2. Okay, so case 1 says absolute value of A equals B. If this is a positive, which it is in this case, so over here, here's our A, the y plus 3, this is our B. Okay, so it says then that A equals B, or A equals the opposite of B. So if we do that, our A is y plus 3. That equals 8. Or y plus 3 will equal the opposite of 8, or negative 8. Because when you take the absolute value here, if you got 8 or negative 8 in here, they would have an absolute value of 8. So now you solve each case. So I'm going to subtract 3 right here. going to subtract 3. So y is equal to 5. Or over here, I'm going to subtract 3. I'm going to subtract 3. Y is equal to negative 11. So you get two answers here. Y is equal to negative 11, or y is equal to 5. Notice if you put those in, 5 plus 3 would be 8 inside absolute value. Absolute value is 8. Negative 11 plus 3 would be negative 8. Take the absolute value, it equals 8. So that checks out. Go to our second example. If you notice right here, we have to isolate the absolute value first. So notice you have the absolute value part right here, but you also have this plus side on or plus 5 on the left-hand side of the equation. We need to get rid of that. So my first step here, I want a minus 5 from each side. Obviously that gets rid of it right here. So I have the absolute value of 6 minus 4t on the left-hand side is equal to negative 5. Okay? If we go back to our sheet that you have been given, if you look down here, the absolute value is isolated, and if b is negative, what it says down here, okay, b is negative, that's a negative number, there is no solution because we can't take the absolute value of anything and get a negative. So if I go back to my example here, notice right here, we've got the absolute value part isolated. Over here, this is a negative. Negative 5. We cannot take the absolute value of something here and get a negative. So right away, once I have it isolated, I say that's the empty set. The last example in the lesson, notice what's different right here. Okay, we already have the absolute value part isolated right here. That's all that's on the left-hand side. But there's an expression over here. So if this is an expression, again, if this is an expression, you cannot look at that being a positive or negative. So we don't know if it has solutions. We have to do our two cases. So we do case 1 or case 2. So this is our A right here. This is our B. So A is what's inside absolute value. It's the expression. So case 1 says A is equal to B, or case 2 says A could equal the opposite of B. Now in this case, there's our A, 8 plus Y, so we're going to put right here, we're going to put 8 plus Y, and that's going to equal the B, which is the expression 2Y minus 3, or A, which is our 8 plus Y, is going to equal the opposite of that expression. So I want the opposite of the quantity 2Y minus 3. Now, notice what you have to do here. You have to distribute that opposite sign. So if we do that over here, this is going to remain 8 plus Y, and that's equal to, what that does is change both those signs, so negative 2Y plus 3. Over here, we have the same thing. Now, if you notice, we got to solve each of these. So I have Y on either side, so I'm going to subtract Y. I'm going to subtract Y. So I have 8 is equal to Y minus 3. I'm going to add 3. I'm going to add my 3. So I get Y is equal to 11. Or, now we got to go through and solve for Y over here. Personally, I like to get rid of my negative term, my negative Y term, so I'm going to add 2Y. Right here, I'm going to add 2Y. So I have 8 plus 2y is equal to 3. Subtract 8. Subtract 8. So 2y is equal to negative 5. I'm sorry, this should be 3y right here. This is 3y. 1y plus 2y is 3y. Now I'm going to divide by 3. I'm going to divide by 3. So I get y is equal to negative 5/3. Now, with these, when there is an expression on this side, you must check to see if your answers work. So I'm going to write that up here. I would suggest putting that in your notes. You must check them. Sometimes one will check out or both will check out. Sometimes none of them will. So what I mean by that is we have to check our answers. So if you notice, our expression was this. Here's our original expression. The absolute value, if I go here, I'll use a different color, but the absolute value of 8 plus y is equal to 2y minus 3. We're going to check to see if 11 works. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put 11 in there. So I'm going to put 11 right there. So inside of here I get the absolute value of 19. I'm going to take the absolute value of that, which is 19. On this side, if I put 11 in, 2 times 11 is 22. Subtract 3. I do get 19. Now notice those are equal, so that checks out. So I can say y equals 11 is definitely the solution. It checks. We're going to do the same thing with our negative 5/3, or we could write that as a mixed number, negative 1 2/3. So let's see if that checks out. I'm looking at what I have written in blue here. I have the absolute value of 8 plus, I'm going to write this as my mixed number, negative 1 2/3, which is 6 2/3. But I want to take the absolute value of that, so it's 6 2/3. Let's see if the right-hand side we get 6 2/3. Okay, so if I go up here, remember that that was equal to 2y minus 3. Now I'm going to put this in as a mixed number, so I'm going to do 2 times, or not as a mixed number, but as an improper fraction. 2 times negative 5/3, and then we have the minus 3. So I'm putting my negative 5/3 in for y. 2 times negative 5/3, remember, that's like 2 over 1. So I get 2 over 1 times negative 5 over 3. I got to multiply first, so that's negative 10 over 3, and then subtract 3. Negative 10 over 3 is negative 3 1/3 as a mixed number. Subtract 3 gives me negative 6 1/3. And I'm sorry, I made a mistake here. This should be 6 1/3 right here. 8 plus a negative 1 2/3 is 6 1/3. So I get 6 1/3 here on the left side, negative 6 1/3 here. Notice they are not equal to each other. So that one does not check out. Thus, we can cross out our negative 5/3 or negative 1 2/3. It doesn't check. Sometimes you'll get both to check. Okay, so our only solution here would be y equals 11.